Washington Post analysis, which found there is no correlation nationally between spending and crime rates. In 2013, the police department in Camden, New Jersey dissolved and was rebuilt with a focus on community policing. Joining me now is former Camden Police Chief Scott Thompson. Scott, thank you very much for joining us. How did it work?
So in 2012, every member of the Camden City Police Department, including myself, was fired. I was a police chief for 20 years. I've been a police officer 20 years, been a police chief for 5. Myself and everyone else had to fill out a 50-page application, take a psychological, take a mental, the physical conditioning, interview, the whole 9 yards. We were all new employees. The opportunity that really provided for us was the ability to build culture as opposed to changing it. So in the previous organization, we had very high levels of mistrust with the community. We were in a public safety crisis. Our crime rates were greater than that of third world countries. And we had a labor organization that every time we tried to institute some type of change for the positive, it would be litigated, it would be stalled, and if it didn't have a pay raise attached to it for the cops, then it essentially could not really come to fruition. So all of this came together. There was a political will from the governor of the state of New Jersey to the county government leadership to the city leadership to try something extreme because the situation was extreme. So we started over. We created a new police force. We created a police force where the philosophy was going to be the empowerment of the community before enforcement of the law. We would bring on every member of the organization, and we wanted them to identify more as a member of the Peace Corps than being a special forces operator. And that we would reclaim these city streets in a manner in which we were empowering the people so that they would be able to reclaim it, as opposed to us militarizing the neighborhoods and thereby polarizing the community even further. And the result in that—
And how has it worked? What is it?
Yeah, so the result of that over the last 7 years, Katie, is we've reduced murders by more than 70%. We've reduced violent crime by 46%. We went from a department that had the highest number of excessive force complaints in the state of New Jersey to having a 95% reduction. We have body cameras on all of our officers. We invest in training and de-escalation, in lowering the temperature in situations. We tell our cops it's okay to back up. We expect them, we mandate them by policy to de-escalate situations prior to using force. And one thing I'd like to add that I think was key in signaling and empowering the community, we worked with the policing project at NYU Law School, and we brought in the ACLU of New Jersey, we brought in our police union, and we brought in the community. And we let them all have a voice in shaping and framing our use of force policy and how we would use force in situations. And I think that was tremendously empowering. I think it showed legitimacy to the community. And the byproduct of that is when we have really tense and critical situations like we see now across the country, Camden is remaining calm.
Do you think this could work in other cities?
Anything's possible. One thing I know in your extremely challenged cities is that the people are extremely resilient. Usually the impediment to this occurring and being successful is not the people. It's usually the politics, it's the bureaucracies, it's the institutions that are involved. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So I think what a lot of cities need to find themselves in a situation to be able to answer the question is, what are we going to do differently? How are we going to approach this differently? How are we going to really try to get to the root cause issues of what is leading to disorder and crime? Because what I've learned in a place particularly like Camden in my experiences is that a ticket book, a service revolver, and a pair of handcuffs really isn't the solution to most of these problems that are vexing our inner cities.
You mentioned the police union a second ago, and when you talk about reform in police departments, there are a number of obstacles, but always one of the biggest obstacles is the police union. By disbanding the Camden Police Department, what happened with the union?
Well, everybody was terminated, including myself. The union, that was gone as well. The new organization, the state of New Jersey, is a state wherein the labor laws allow people to organize. The new organization, they did organize, they did form a union. It was the same union, it was the Fraternal Order of Police. However, it was under different leadership. So, it's not all unions are bad. It's oftentimes you'll find rogue individual leadership. And look, you see in some of these labor organizations across the country, they're not necessarily reflective of the demographics of the organization itself or the community in which they're policing. And oftentimes that's an underlying issue as well.
What do you say to people who are concerned about not being able to get a police officer when they need one, might not trust the idea of a community group coming to patrol their streets, or might not trust the idea of a social worker doing wellness checks, who might feel like they need a police officer there to stay safe?
Well, Katie, the issue isn't whether the police are there or not. I think the police should always have some type of role for a presence for readiness. I think that's an important component. The issue comes in is when we have the expectation of the officer who is ill-equipped, undertrained, and not educated to handle some of these situations that people with PhDs, and especially in that discipline, have yet to be able to fully be able to address as well. So I do think, one, I don't think getting rid of police is the answer. I don't think that's reasonable. I think I just don't see how we could do that. You still need police to be able to intersect with really bad people who are doing really bad things. But it is not unreasonable to say that society would be better off if we stopped putting the expectation and politically delegating the responsibility of dealing with mental illness, dealing with homelessness, dealing with addiction to a 22-year-old that just got out of the academy and has a high school diploma, and expect them to figure it out with a pistol, a pair of handcuffs, and a ticket book.
Yeah. Scott Thompson. Scott, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. It is a fascinating discussion and so interesting to see what was able to be done there in Camden. Thank you very much. And coming up next, what our new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows could be precedent.